just going to go over some of the tools that you'll need for this repair. You'll need your Isesmo to take off the screen and get behind a few things. We'll need some pointer tweezers. We'll need your tri-wing screwdriver. You'll need a Phillips screwdriver. We'll need your pentalobe screwdriver to do the bottom screws, and then we'll need a spudger to move some connectors. And then what you want to do is start off with the bottom two screws. So use your pentalobe screwdriver for this. Get to a point where you can get your fingers in it just to give it a little bit more lever, and you want to go all the way down the edges. And same with the other side. And this side is the right side is the side you need to be careful with, because it does have the cables for the screen and the front camera. And then the top you don't want to go in too deep either, because it's got the front camera there. So if you go in too deep, you could end up hitting that front camera, and you'll have a lot of problems if you damage the front camera. Right, so there we go. Right, so the phone opens up like a book, so it opens up from left to right. So there we go. So once that's open, we'll then need to, first thing, always unplug the battery. So it's got 5 screws down the side here, down this middle plate. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You need to undo all of those, and those you'll be using the tri-wing screwdriver. Like I said, try and put all these screws in an order that you can put them back in, and you'll know exactly where they go. Awesome. So once you've done all those screws, you can just lift up that plate. There we go, and that will reveal all the connectors underneath it. So the first connector you want to lift up is the one that's connected to the battery. So that will be, it's kind of got like a lower platform and a higher platform. So those will be lower and those will be higher. So it's the first one on the higher one that you want to disconnect. You can see the little battery cable goes down to it. So that's the one you want to disconnect first, because that is your actual battery cable. Right, after that you want to take off the screen itself. So you've got 2 connectors, which is the lower one here, the higher one there, and you want to take the first one off on the left hand side of the bottom row. So you can use your nails for this, or you could use the flat end of a spudger, and you can just go in and lift it up. With a spudger, be very careful, because you could end up hitting some chips with it. So you just want to go in gently and lightly and lift it up. So that's the screen connectors unplugged, and the one for the front camera. So the front camera one is got a little bit of adhesive down the bottom here. So you just want to lift it up and hold the cables down on the other side, so it doesn't take the cables with it. A little bit there. Right. So that's the screen off. So the screen you can put to one side for now. So what we need to do is we need to take out the whole insides of the iPhone X. Right. So now that the battery's out, we can start removing pretty much everything else. What we'll do is we'll remove the dock first. So the dock has this long cable that goes up here, and is attached by that screw there. So you just want to unplug it first. You want to get your tri-ring screwdriver and just remove that screw there. And then we're going to move all the screws on the dock. So you've got quite a few screws all over there. We'll just remove all those. Like I said, this is a good point where if you're using magnetic mat, you can write them all down exactly where they go. Some of these screws will be tri-ring screws, some of them will be Phillips screws. So we'll just get the majority of the tri-ring ones done first. Right, so there's all the top layer of the tri-wings ones done. Now we'll move on to the Phillips screwed ones. Alright, so that's all the ones on the surface taken out. So now what we want to do is lift off this little plate at the bottom here. Kind of goes all the way across. Just want to lift it out. It is connected at the bottom here. So don't lift it out all the way, you just want to kind of get it to a point where you can feel it being loose in there. Right, so once you get it loose, you can kind of lift it up and lift it back, and you can see right under there is a little connector, and that will be part of this little bracket. So you want to lift that up. So this is where you can get your spudger, just with the pointy bit, get in there, clip that up, and that will be that little part off. Once you get that part off, we can move to the rest of the dock. So you have this little shield over there. Just want to lift that one up. And then lift up that little connector as well. Right, so we're going to remove some of the other screws on it in the moment. Right, so what you want to do is you want to remove that screw there and that screw there. Those are torrent screws. So what you can use for that is you can use your pencil lobe screwdriver, just go in the middle of them, and that should turn them out. Alright, so once that's done, you can lift up this little plate here. We can lift up the loudspeaker. Which is attached by some foam at the bottom here. So you can just lift it straight up. And all the foam will break at the bottom there, but we'll put some new ones on. Alright, so now what we'll move is remove the Taptic engine. So you just want to disconnect this little connector here, and you'll see the Taptic engine will just kind of pop out. Right, so the only thing we've got left is the one turn screw there, and the two screws that are holding the dock into the frame. So we'll remove those. There we go. I'll remove those two screws at the bottom there. Right, so that's those screws out now as well. Brilliant. So you don't want to remove the actual dock cable yet, because it's got this long cable that goes all the way down there. So we'll just leave it like that for now. We'll move on to actually taking out the main board itself. Right, so to do that, we need to unplug all these connectors. So just go down the board, unplugging them one by one. Make sure the little foam that sits around it doesn't come with it. Right, so that'll be all those connectors unplugged from there. So there's probably a good time to remove the SIM tray. Alright, so now what you need to do is, there is a connector underneath there as well, which we'll get to in a bit. But what we're going to do is we're going to take out the screws that are holding the board in place. So you've got that screw there, we've got a screw there, and then generally this bracket that sits around the rear camera kind of holds it in place as well. So we're going to remove all those screws. So for the frame one, you can, for the camera frame one, you can remove that one, and you can remove the one on the other side. Alright, so all those screws are out now. This little camera frame is a bit of a nightmare. It's not easy to get out when the actual board is in. So you see it's catching up the top there. So you don't want to remove this right now, you just want to kind of leave it there. What we need to do is we need to remove this main board. So like I said, it's got a little connector that's connected under there. But so that screw there as well. I removed that one already, but yeah, that screw there needs to come out as well, because that kind of connects to the board. So you need to remove that one as well. It's just a little bracket that sits in there that pushes the board down and makes connection to the board. So once all those are out, you should be able to lift up the board, make sure the connectors aren't getting pulled and ripped out. So, right, now we need to remove that little connector from the bottom here. So the connector from the bottom is a little bit of a nightmare because it kind of connects from this way over, and then it's got another cable, ribbon cable, that sits over the top of it. So what you can do is you can try and get in there and try and lift it up. You also do have the little ribbon cable that sits over the top of it, which you can pull back. Obviously with all ribbon cables that you pull off, just be very careful. You don't want to get to a point where you rip the ribbon cable, because then you'll get problems and you have to replace something else on it. So once that ribbon cable's out of the way, you can see the connector sitting underneath it. Right, so the best way to undo that connector is, it's got a little bit of foam on it as well, which kind of doesn't help, and it makes it a little bit awkward to see where the actual ribbon cable connects in. But what you generally can do is get a little sharp tweezer in there. You don't want to be too rough with it. You just want to kind of move it out the way and just get under the connector. All that you need is a slight little bit underneath the connector to just lift it up. But be very careful because you can stab the board and you can hurt a lot of things there. But once that's up, you should just be able to lift the board out and it'll come up. So there. The connector for that one is a little bit weird as well, so you just need to be very careful with that one. Right. So once that's done, you can see why we didn't remove the dock. So that dock's got that ribbon cable that goes all the way up there and all the way along to there. So if we try to take out that dock, we'd have to get to that point where it lifts up here and then wait until we take out the board. So we might as well just take out the board, leaving it in place. Right, so what you can do now is you can just start peeling back a little bit of the ribbon cables. You want to kind of make sure that the adhesive for the ribbon cable comes with it, because the problem you've got is when we're putting it into the new rear, if it doesn't have the adhesive with it, it won't sit into place. You'll kind of have to put it there and it'll move around. So if you have the adhesive that comes with it, you can just stick it back into place. Right, so what you want to do now is you just want to remove the front camera part. This front camera you need to be very careful with. This front camera controls the Face ID. Obviously if you damage that, you're not getting the Face ID back. It's kind of like the home buttons with the fingerprint sensors. If you replace them, you can't get the fingerprint touch back. So if you replace this camera, you got problems. So yeah, we'll take that out and just be, like I said, be very careful. So you've got one screw there that you need to take out. So with taking it out, you don't want to just pull it straight up. You kind of want to push it a little bit to the bottom, and just be very gentle, and you can take it out. Because what it kind of does is it kind of sits in. So if you just kind of pull it up, you could end up hurting some of the stuff on the back. You kind of just want to like wiggle it around just until you feel it can lift up and pull it out. Right, so now we need to take out the rear cameras. So that there, you still can't take out, because like I said, it's trapped behind the back there. Right, so with that out, you want to remove this rear camera. The best way to do it It's kind of just by lifting up that connector and out. So you kind of like, you pull it up just to get to the point where it's not sitting behind the frame anymore, and you can pull it out. Obviously we could do that before, but there's really no point in it until we're actually taking out the rear camera. Right, so that's out. Obviously when you're taking out that little cable, watch out for this little cable. It shouldn't hurt it by taking out that, but obviously now that it's lifting up, you could end up catching it, so just watch out about that little cable. Right, so getting out the rear camera, the top here, you kind of got like a little bit that you can grab onto. You just want to pull it out. Just be very careful. Don't like just yank it out. Just slowly ply it out, and you'll feel it kind of popping out, because it's got all this foam that's kind of stuck down to the bottom. It should take the foam with it, and you should get the whole portion of the foam with it, with the adhesive sticky part on it. So pull that out. Right, so what we're probably going to do now is we're going to take out the actual dock itself. Right, so we're going to take out the dock itself. So we're just going to kind of peel off all this cable. Obviously with peeling up cable, you want to be very careful, because peeling a cable you can end up damaging by doing it. So you just want to kind of pull it up and just do it very slowly, very slowly. I mean, obviously one good way to do it, and good helper for it, is applying some heat, but you don't want to apply too much heat. Using sharp tweezers, not always good, so generally use the flat tweezers for this, just so it doesn't do, you can't pierce it pretty much, which if you pierce it will do a lot of damage. But like I said before, you want to kind of get the adhesive to come with it. So obviously when you're pulling up this cable, just watch out for this cable here, kind of goes all the way to the back there. You just want to gently pull it up, and obviously this bit here, you've got frame that it sits, the cable sits underneath. Just watch out for that. You don't want to pull it up and damage it on that frame. What we'll probably do is we'll probably end up removing that frame. It'll probably be a little bit easier. So for the frame, it's got a few screws down there. We can just take that off. Just that way removing the cable will be a little bit easier. So I'm just going to remove those 3 screws. I don't know if I said this in the start, but by no means is this an easy repair. Doing a frame swap is generally hard on most devices, because you have to remove literally everything, which does make it a little bit complicated, and obviously you've got a lot of screws everywhere, so you just want to be very careful. Right, so once that frame's out, you've then got room to actually lift up this whole entire cable. Just a lot easier. Okay, right, so once you get to this point here, where it's got the little turn in it, you don't want to be yanking at it too much, because it can just spit at that, because it's kind of like a fragile point. So what you want to probably get then is just the back of your spudger, and just go down it, because that way it kind of gives a better little point to work at, instead of just trying to pull at it. Right, so what you want to do is just do the same all the way down. Obviously this part here, very weak point again. Wherever there's a little cutout or a little turn in the cable is a very weak point. So you just want to be very careful about that. just with your spudger, just go in there gently, just pushing at it slowly, just so you can lift up the adhesive little bit by little bit. Like I said, one way to do it where it makes the cable a lot easier to come off, and comes off with all the adhesive as well, is by using a little bit of heat to it, and that generally helps getting it off without damaging it, because the adhesive's kind of weak. Then you can just kind of pull it up and the whole thing will just come off. Alright, so what you just need to do now is on the bottom here for the little mic, it's attached to this little bracket over here. You just want to kind of take it away from the bracket, just held by a little bit of adhesive. So just be gentle, get your flat metal tool in there, and you'll get it to a point where it lifts up. It should come off with all the adhesive as well, so you can stick it back to the new frame. But that lifts up like that. Right. So we're just going to get behind the bottom part now. Obviously, when there's chips on the board or stuff like that, you need to be very careful as well, because you could end up damaging chips on the main board. So obviously behind there you're a little bit blind underneath there, but like I said, you get to any point where you feel it's not going anywhere, don't push anymore, just kind of stop, kind of assess the situation, see why it's doing it, just so you don't end up just forcing at it. Because the worst thing you can do on iPhone repairs, or pretty much any repair, is just force something. You want to kind of find out why it's struggling to come out, and that generally gives you a better idea of what's going on. Right, so just got this little tape on the top here. You don't have to remove it, you can just pull it out with it. It's just something that we remove off. Right. It's being a little bit of a pain to come out. So one other thing you can do is you can try and go in through the dock. Obviously with this, just apply a little bit of pressure, just so you can see the dock coming off. You can swap these cables around to just get this top part off. It just makes it easier in getting to the bottom part. So just take the top part off first. And that just gives us a little bit better room to work with at the bottom, and we're kind of not going in blind and we can see what we're doing. So like I said, with this, just be careful. If you get to a point where the flathead or the spudger is not working properly, you can use a metal tool, but be very, very careful with metal tools. Metal tools are never good when it comes to connectors, or I mean to ribbon cables, because you can slip and you can cut it, or you can just put too much force in it and it can go straight through the cable. Like that. Now we lift it up, and this come with all the adhesive on the back of it as well. So that'll be the dock part. Right. So what we need to do now is we're going to put the dock in. So you need to get this cable first. Only goes in one way. Pretty much sits over all the little screw connectors. so it'll kind of sit in and kind of sit in one way. That's pretty much it. It won't kind of go anything past that. It'll just kind of be that, and that's it. And then we'll put in the dock connector over that. So same thing, only goes in one way, sits straight over the top of it. Like so. Make sure you line up the bottom mic, so that's in place. And the rest of it kind of just sits over the top. I'm going to push down this whole entire connector as well. And then what we'll do is we'll just screw it a little bit into place, because that will lift up. So we want to do the dock first. Do the bottom two screws first for this dock. Both of those screwed in. Right, so once that's screwed in, it'll kind of hold it into place. The rest of it will move around slightly.